how did you make this blog make enough money that your husband could quit his job? Well, first I decided to write a book called
Ruth Soukup, the visionary founder of Elite Blog Academy and CEO of Ruth Soukup Omnimedia. Ruth is a New York Times best-selling author of 7 impactful books and the host of 2 top-rated podcasts.
In her TED Talk, Ruth shares her personal journey and offers transformative insights on how to overcome your biggest fear.
I talk to a lot of people and a lot of business owners who are like, oh, I just want an integrator to take care of all of this stuff. And how do you find that person? I'm like, well, it took years of development and years of work to get to the point in our relationship where we can have that so much trust that you don't have to worry about it. If you try to throw it on somebody and think that it's all going to be great before you've actually given that trust relationship time to build, that is a recipe for disaster.
We always ask people this question of, are you a creative person or a business person? And I found your answer really interesting where you said, I'm a visionary and I do both. So I would love for you to describe the sort of like universe of what you do through that lens of like being a visionary and how you really like manage all of that.
Whew, that's a big question. How much time do you have? Hopefully a lot.
We have 90 minutes.
Yeah. So, well, first, just kind of the background. Like you said, I have multiple companies that I have founded and started and run sort of under one corporate umbrella. So my overarching company is called Ruth Soukup Omnimedia, which is just basically the umbrella corporation. And we have sort of some corporate stuff but each company underneath that is a separate LLC and set up to be a separate entity. So the 3 main brands that I run under that are Living Well, Spending Less, which was my first original brand and company. And I started that, way back in 2010 as a stay-at-home mom of 2 toddlers. And it's really about, organizing your life and getting your life in order. We have a planner company under that umbrella called the Living Well Planner. And we really help women manage their time and get organized at home. And then that business was going really well, and well enough that I was able to retire my husband in 2013, and he was able to come home. And when that happened, I had just a lot of people start asking me. It was both readers and friends and other bloggers and other people in the online space were like, how did you do this? How did you make this blog make enough money that your husband could quit his job? So I didn't really have the intention at that point of starting another company, but because so many people were asking, and I ended up, first I decided to write a book called How to Blog for Profit Without Selling Your Soul. And I just thought that if I just unloaded my brain in this book, everybody would stop asking me questions, and then I could just hand them the book every time somebody asked me, like, how do I start a blog? Well, that only led to more questions, right? People just wanting to know more. And then they asked me to do consulting. And so eventually I started another brand called Elite Blog Academy and created a program that now teaches online business owners or aspiring online business owners how to create a successful, profitable online business. So that was business number 2. And then just recently, about a little more than a year ago, I ended up starting a 3rd major brand called Thinlicious. And that one really was born out of just my own personal journey with losing weight and getting healthy as a woman over 40. And it was at that point of starting the 3rd brand that I realized that I needed to kind of split up my companies, because up until that point, my team had really kind of run everything just under one umbrella, right? I had one email person and they did emails for both companies, and everybody split their time between the 2 things. And
just out of curiosity, what did the team look like at that point? Is it just sort of specialists in different things like email, social media, whatever, or is there the integrators there managing it with you or something else?
Yeah. So I would say I had an integrator, and, at different points, my team looked different because I kind of went through different phases. So at one point I had, this huge team of people. I think we had like 35 people on the team, and I had a leadership team, and we had different departments, and there was like the marketing department and the graphics department and all the different things. And then that just it felt like I was becoming so bureaucratic and so big, and we were spending so much money on all these people that we almost like went through kind of this awakening in, I would say 2019, where I did a lot of soul searching and realized like this was not working. And together actually with my leadership team, we ended up kind of revamping the whole company and restructuring the whole company and getting much, much smaller. We ended up firing more than half the team, or letting go, some were contractors, so you don't have to fire contractors, but getting rid of half the team, and then cutting down even more to the point where we had a core team of about 10 people. And we described it as almost like an amoeba where we would sort of shift to do whatever needed to be done, right? People would wear multiple hats and do multiple things. And we were very nimble and very flexible, and it was very profitable for a number of years. Like we had some really, really great years after doing that. And then once I decided to start this third brand, that's when it became clear fairly quickly that trying to operate 3 brands with the same team is not fair to any one of the brands. And so we shifted again, and now I would say we're still in the process of, we've split these three brands into 3 separate companies with 3 separate teams. And for 2 of the 3 teams, I'm very uninvolved. So I'm very much just the visionary who I meet with my team leaders once a week, and we call it our big picture call, and we talk about strategy, and they tell me where they're going, and I give feedback and that kind of thing. And it's all very high level. And I actually love that. And that's my dream for all 3 of my teams. For Thinlicious, it's a little different. I'm much more hands-on in the weeds with that team, just because it's so brand new and we're still in the process of building that brand and figuring out exactly how it's going to work and how it's going to happen. So it's a little bit different with each one, but that's kind of how it works. So as you mentioned, I do have an integrator, Heather, who has been with me actually since the very beginning of my business. She was the very first person I ever hired. She had her own company at that time. She was a graphic designer, and she had her own company, and I hired her to do some website stuff for me, and then hired her for other stuff to the point where I think by 2016, I was her only client because she was doing so much stuff. And it had gone I used to call her my fixer of all things. And so when we really started to apply, and integrator is a term from Traction. I don't know if you talk about that ever in your podcast, but Gina Wickman was the person who wrote the book Traction, and we implemented Traction, I think back in 2017 or 2018 in our company. And that's when I started thinking about like an integrator role and what that looks like. And Heather was obviously the best fit for that role. And honestly, it's such a match made in heaven for us because our brains are completely different. We're so on the same page, just in terms of like, I never have to worry that she doesn't have my best interest at heart, the company's best interest at heart. Like we see eye to eye on everything, but we see the world completely differently, if that makes sense.
Could you give an example of like where you guys see the world differently, or where you both see the world differently?
She's just very tactile and very much a high follow through, get it done, like checklist, detail oriented person. She's good with numbers. She's good with making sure that nothing slips through the cracks. Whereas I'm always like thinking about the big picture, and thinking about like, where could we go and what could this be? And the idea person. So, I mean, it really is such a great match for that, for like what, I mean, and they talk about that in the book Rocket Fuel. Gina Wickman talks about that. This kind of where you can have somebody who's kind of the pie in the sky idealist. I set the culture, I set the tone, I set the direction of where we want to go. But when I have to be the person who's following through and like getting stuck with all the minutia, that's when I get like crazy, right? I hate doing that kind of stuff. And so, whereas Heather, like she just doesn't have that same type of vision. She needs to have the idea, and then she can go and take it. And so that has worked great for us for years now. And we talk all the time. We like this morning, we both walked our dogs at the same time and talked the whole time. and she lives in a different state, so we don't get to like be in person all the time. But it doesn't matter, right? I never have to worry that she's going off in a different direction, because we're like two sides of the same coin.
So lots of threads to pull on this. For all creators, like there's always this like sort of like integrator visionary pair, and creators are notorious for like not wanting to give things up. So can you talk about sort of both the evolution of that relationship and what advice you would give to creators on what makes it work, and also like how to like avoid conflicts, or what kind of conflicts show up in that relationship and how to manage those?
Yeah. So I would say, like, I understand that not wanting to give things up, because I am a very creative person, and there are certain things and certain tasks in my business that I'm very picky about. Like content creation, for instance, is something that I love to write. I love to create content. I love to distill concepts down into step by step. And I think that's one of the things that has made our business successful in all three realms, is that the quality of what we put out is really, really good, right? Like it's always actionable. It's always practical. It's always, because that's just how my brain works. I can take all this information and distill it down and make it something that people can take and go, oh, finally, I get that. Like it makes sense, whether it's weight loss, whether it's organizing your house, whether it's building the business. And so that's been something that I struggle to give up. But I think that that's okay. And what I have also found is that you can't do everything. So you have to find the things that you don't want to do and that you don't like to do, or that bore you, or that are tedious for you, and then give up all of those, so that eventually all of your time is spent doing the thing that you shine in. And so for me, that is giving, like, I don't look at our financial stuff, because I trust Heather completely on all of that, right? I know she has that. She gives me reports on that. I don't do email. I haven't done email in 10 years. That all goes through my assistant. There's so many different things that I don't do in my business, so that I can spend all of my time doing the things that I shine in. And I will even sometimes say to my team, like, you know what? I've spent too much time in the weeds this week, and we're not using the big part of my brain. And we need, like, our business thrives when we use the big part of my brain, not when I get stuck doing all of this little stuff. So somebody else needs to figure out how to do this so that I'm not stuck doing it. And we kind of reevaluate on a regular basis. Or I'll just tell Heather, like when we talk, I'll say, I'm not using the big part of my brain. We need my brain. And she knows that. And so I think the fact that I respect everything that she does, that I'm so grateful for everything she does, because she's doing all the stuff that I don't have to. Does that make sense?
What were some of the sort of like key points in that relationship that maybe made it stronger and helped increase that trust? Because let's say someone hires an integrator, right? It's from the start, it's really hard to give up that trust, especially if you're a creator who's like their business is them. So what was that evolution and key points that increased that trust for you guys?
I think time is a big thing, which is hard to think about, right? Because I talk to a lot of people and a lot of business owners who are like, oh, I just want an integrator to take care of all of this stuff. And how do you find that person? I'm like, well, it took years of development and years of work to get to the point in our relationship where we can have that so much trust that you don't really have to worry about it. And I've actually had not great trust relationships. So I think part of that has been learning from what not to do, and from the people that I trusted that I shouldn't have trusted. And I think getting to a point where you have to like kind of let go slowly sometimes and be okay with that. And with all my employees, I find that it takes me time to build up trust for them to know that they can do that. But so I give them little tasks, or I give them smaller things and see how they do. And if they shine in that, then I can give them the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And I think if you try to like just throw it on somebody and think that it's all going to be great before you've actually given that trust relationship time to build, that is a recipe for disaster. I mean, I've learned that, unfortunately, the hard way too many times.
Yeah, I've done that too, which is like hired someone and been like, okay, you've got the experience, you're in charge of that. But I found that too, which is even if someone comes with a pedigree or a background in it, how I do things is different, right? So you really do have to spend that time with them to teach them how things operate within your organization. One of the things that you were describing too, or you mentioned before, was how you grew the team to 35 people. There was like leadership and all these different functions. I'm curious, like, what was the sort of like impetus for doing that? And what was that moment where you realized, oh, maybe this isn't what I want? And what did that look like?
Yeah, well, I think, I went through several years where my business was just growing fast, right? And I was just hiring people to try to keep up with all of the things, and hiring a lot of contractors who were then, we had an agency doing stuff and they were doing a good job in one area. And so we gave them more and more and more and more stuff until I looked and there's all these people and all this stuff. And we're paying them $50,000 a month for all of these things. And I mean, it gets to a point. And part of the problem as a creative, and I would say that, like, looking back, and I've had much reflection on sort of that time in my life, but looking back, this was 2017, 2018, 2019. And I was very much focused as a creative. I was focused on a new project, and this project was writing a book called Do It Scared. And I was really excited about this project. And I did this huge research study. It was like, we surveyed over 4,000 people. It's work that I'm still really proud of, right? It's like, It was an amazing, I'm proud of the book. I'm proud of the work that we did. I'm proud of the study and all the stuff that came out of it. We developed this whole fear survey and fear archetypes. And it was great work. But while I was busy pursuing that creative endeavor, I wasn't paying attention to my company. And that's where at that point, Heather wasn't my integrator. And the person I had acting in that role really wasn't capable, but I wasn't paying attention. And so ultimately, I mean, one of my favorite mentors always has a thing, Michael Hyatt, I don't know if you know him. He always says, what is it about my leadership that led to this result? Like, that's the leadership question that you always have to ask yourself. And so I've had a lot of time to reflect on that time. And I can honestly say it was my lack of leadership that led to the results that we got to. And so right after that book came out, I was just burned out on all fronts, right? Like, I was burned out because I had been working, trying to get this book out, and then doing all the promotions that come with launching a major book, and, podcast episode after podcast episode, and traveling and media and, all the stuff, and running myself ragged. I was working 80 hours a week and just, ignoring my family, gaining weight, just not healthy on all fronts. But I also, like, our company wasn't thriving. So it wasn't like I had stepped away from that and then let everything run. Like, I also felt the pressure of, we're not making money. So now I have to, do all the things to make money, because at that point in our company, I was the driver. I was the revenue driver. And if I turned my head, the revenue went down. And so I started looking around, and I had this overwhelming feeling like, why am I working so hard? I'm working harder and harder and harder to pay all these other people to do nothing and not make money for me. I'm like, what am I doing here? Why am I doing this? And so I really had to have kind of a come to Jesus moment with myself first. And it started with having to fire the person who was at that time my integrator, which was devastating, because I considered her like a very close friend at that point, right? Our families had vacation together, and I knew it was going to be the end of the friendship, and it was. But I also knew that I had no business being a coach to other business people, which I was, without being willing to make the hard decisions in my own business. And so ultimately I did make that decision, and we turned things around and ended up, certainly, we went from the first half of 2019 was like the worst half of a year we'd ever had, to going to the second half, which was the best half of a year we'd ever had. And it was almost an immediate turnaround, but it really required me to make some hard decisions and be willing to revisit kind of what I was doing and revamp it. And I'm so grateful for that time now. I'm grateful for that time because that was 2019. And that put us in a position nobody knew what was going to happen in March of 2020. But as soon as the pandemic hit, like we had already gone through our kind of crisis, and we were well prepared as an online company to thrive during that time. And we did. 2020 ended up being like the best year our company had ever had. So it just, you look back and you see those things, but what that has prepared me for now in this stage of the business that we're in now is to know what I don't want, right? I know even as I grow my team, and we're adding more people again, and that can feel scary, but we're very intentional about it. And we have very high expectations for people. And what I've also done is I've taught my leaders how to be revenue drivers. And I've set up systems in my company so that I don't have to feel like I'm the only one who knows how to drive revenue, that they understand how their actions affect the money that we make. And I make that very clear. And I also put systems and processes in place so that it's systematized. Like the way that we track things, and the way that we look at things, and the way that we talk about the revenue, and the way that I have, full transparency for my team, and how we look at our books allows everyone to connect what they're doing on a day-to-day basis with the amount of money that comes in.
So a few threads again to pull on this. This is so great. And thank you for sharing so openly. When you talked about making sure that every person on your team now becomes a revenue driver, what does that actually look like? What are the systems that you've implemented to do that?
Well, there's a whole bunch of different things that I've done. I mean, I would say one of the most basic is that I created a revenue projector spreadsheet that everybody on my team uses. And it's literally it breaks down our marketing activities by day, and then puts what we project those marketing activities are going to create each day. And then they have to fill it in at the end of the day to see whether we actually created the amount of revenue we thought we were going to from those marketing activities on a daily basis. So it's not, we look back a month later and see, oh, this was a down month, I wonder what happened. It actually gives them much more daily control, because they can see exactly what's happening on a daily basis, and how what we're doing and spending time on is actually affecting the revenue. And so that's one thing, right? We've also systematized the process of asking ourselves, did this work? Is this working? How is this working? Why is this working? What can we do to make this work better? And I've systematized that in a lot of different ways. We have better goals, and better, even our goal setting process. We do annual planning, but we break that down into quarterly planning, and we always have a quarterly WIG for each brand has their own quarterly WIG of what we're trying to accomplish. And then each person has goals that are set into that. And then like for my Thinlicious team, which I'm currently running, we even break that down into our weekly sprint. What are we doing this week to get closer to our goals, so that we can be sure that we're moving the needle and that it's actually working, and is this working? And we do debriefs on that kind of stuff. So I think and then I do, more big picture stuff. I actually do leadership training with my leaders, where we've systematized our onboarding, of course, for anybody who comes into the company. But I also have a specific leadership training portal where I make training videos. I just did a boot camp for my leaders, about a month or two ago, that I called Revenue Driver Boot Camp. And we talked about what it looks like to drive revenue, and how, and all the different ways, and why we do things. And because what I've realized is that, everything that I know is developed from years and years of experience, from trial and error, from doing this and, oh, this worked and this didn't work. And I think entrepreneurs sort of do that naturally if you have your own business, because you're so incentivized to make it work, right? You do whatever it takes, and you try things, and you try this, and you go, oh, that didn't work, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this, and oh, this did work. And you develop an intuition for it, but you forget that intuition didn't just happen overnight, right? You didn't wake up one morning and go, I'm going to be an entrepreneur and I'm just going to know everything that I need to know. And so I had to stop believing that my employees would have that same sort of intuition, having not had 13 or 14 years of trial and error that I've had. And so I had to start becoming much more intentional at breaking down what did I learn? Why did I learn this? And why do I do things this way? Because of all the things that I've learned along the way that have gotten to me to this point and why this works. And so since I've been doing that more and more and more, and we have more and more conversations, and I'm very adamant about like teaching and training and talking about it with them, it's, you start to see the clicks and the connections. And I won't say that we're 100% where I want to be, but I know that I'm like, as I keep it up, it's important. But then I also have to find a way to systematize it so that I know when a new person comes on board, they have the ability to pick it up faster. Does that make sense?
It makes so much sense. And as you were describing it, I was just thinking, I was like, if you're a course creator and your skill is making courses and training, it makes sense to do that for your internal team also. And I sort of like never connected the dots, but it's cool that you're doing that, because a lot of creators, like that's the thing that they have. The issue that they have is like they'll bring someone on and they have to spend time training, and then they're like, I don't want to do all of this. I just want to create. But you've created, and now you can train everyone who comes into your team over and over and over again.
Yes. And I personally prefer that, right? Like there's two schools of thought about hiring people, right? There's people who are like, I'm just going to go find the best people and hire them and pay a premium and bring them in so that they can just hit the ground running and know what they're doing. And there's something to be said for that. But I have found in my own experience that when I do that the person, number one, my expectations are too high of that person, because whatever they've learned up to that point doesn't necessarily fit into the way that we operate or the way that my brain works or how I want things to go or what our vision is. And so there's still training, but then because I feel like they should already know all this stuff, I'm mad and irritated. Whereas I find that now I'm much happier if I look for the people who have the right qualities that I want to see in my employees. So leadership skills, critical thinking skills, that they embody our core values for our company, which are incredibly important to us, right? Our core values are get it done, figure it out, always learn and grow, humble confidence, and own it. And so we're not big on titles in our company. And if you're a person that needs some certain title, then I know right off the bat that you're not going to fit in with our company, because you need to have the confidence to know that it's not the title that makes you good at your job. And so I like to find those diamond in the roughs, and I find myself constantly looking at people and observing people, whether it's online or whether it's in real life. And, I just actually hired a friend of my niece's, because I was at a baby shower. I was up in Washington State at a baby shower, and this gal comes in. She's a friend of my niece, knows nobody else there. I'd never met her before. She hadn't met anybody else in the family before. And she comes into this baby shower and she just took charge, right? She started hanging things up. She started telling people where to go and where to sit, and took control and wrote down the names of wrote down the gifts, and like just saw what needed to be done, and she could do it. And that quality is not like something that people just naturally have. But that's the kind of quality that I want in somebody that works for me, right? Is somebody who can come into any situation and not be intimidated and know exactly what to do. So I talked to her afterwards. Turns out she was in marketing, and I'm like, it took me 6 months to convince her to come and work for me, but I finally got her. So it's, I think that you like, I'm willing to play the long game to get the right people on my team, because I think that is ultimate. And I find that when people come and work for me, they tend to stay for a long time. And my average employee has been with me for probably over 5 years. So that's like, in this industry, I feel like that's pretty good.
Yeah. As you were describing it, the story, that's a special feeling when you want someone to work with you and it takes 6 months, but they finally say yes. That must have felt really good. What have you learned about finding those diamonds in the rough? So for example, two things I do is I look, like you said, like I look for people who exemplify like great customer service. So for example, remember on the phone with someone from the Four Seasons, and I was trying to like, make something happen because my brother was visiting with my niece, and I was like, can I do like something special for her birthday? Because I couldn't visit, and they did amazing. I was like, I should have hired that person just for that, right? And the other thing I do is whenever I find someone who's really good, I ask them, if you were to start a company and you could only work with 5 people from all the people that you worked with so far, who would those be? So those have been really good to like find those people. I'm curious, like, what have you learned about one, like finding those diamonds in the rough, but also once you found them, once you brought them into your company, both sort of like developing them and keeping them for the long term, like you described, like 5+ years.
Yeah. So, I mean, finding them, I feel like it's just being aware, right? Being aware and paying attention and seeing people and noticing people. I love to watch people and watch how they interact and watch what they do. And honestly, those kind of people that are really blow you away, they don't come around that often. And so if they do, then scoop them up, pay attention, talk to them, see what they're, see where they're at, ask questions. So that's that side of things. As far as when people come on board, I think that, again, just having a good onboarding system in place has been really key for us. And so we have a very, a very robust onboarding process where it's all laid out, it's very clear, but it also is something that incorporates our core values, right? Which is a get it done and figure it out kind of mentality. Like you have to take ownership of your own training. We'll give you all the things, we'll give you all the tools, we'll show you where to go. But if you can't do this and take ownership of it, like we're going to know right away that this is not the right place for you. And so that's that, we have a handbook. And then I think in terms of retention, I think something that's been great for my team is, there's a few different things that we have in place. First of all, like I said, we have even though we're nimble and we're online and we're doing lots of different things and we move really fast, everybody always knows where we're going. I'm very good at sharing, here's my vision. Here's where I see us going. We have each of our brands has a 3-year plan that's completely mapped out. Like this is our big goal. These are the milestones that we need to hit. This is what we're working on right now. And then these are what our goals are for this quarter. This is what your goals are for this quarter. And we're very, very diligent about following through on that. I mean, part of it helps that I literally have a course on time management, right? So if I feel like my employees aren't managing their time well, I'm like, you need to go watch this course. We need to work on your power planning. And so I do try to be the kind of boss that is like helping people, guide them and nurture them in ways that show that I care about them as people and about developing them as people and about developing their skills and finding the best place for them and all of that. And I think that comes through. We're also very transparent about numbers, which I think is important. I wasn't always that way. And I think that was something that I had to learn, is that it's like when you operate with transparency for your team and they understand where you're going and how what they're doing connects to our goals and what we're trying to accomplish, it makes them feel like they're a part of something bigger. And I think the fact that we're, every business hopefully is helping to facilitate transformation in the lives of their customers. But I think the fact that my employees can see that we're facilitating transformation in the lives of our customers is a big deal, whether it's helping them get their homes in order, whether it's helping them lose weight, whether it's helping them build businesses. We have 15,000 students at Elite Academy that we've helped over the last 10 years, and they've built 7-figure businesses, 8-figure businesses. And knowing that we've helped people to create that and the things that they come back and tell us, like, I can do this because of you. That's pretty cool. And it's awesome for me, but it's awesome for my employees too. So I think that helps. I think the fact that they see me really actually care about the people that we serve and that they know that it's not, even though, don't get me wrong, I like money. I like making money. I like helping other people make money. I love money, right? That money makes the world go round. But I love, there's a deeper purpose in everything that we're doing. And then, even from a spiritual perspective, my faith is important to me, even though there's no requirements that any of my employees like go to church or anything like that. But I do, like, I hosted a team devotion once a week, and it's totally optional. Some people come, some people don't, but it's a way that we can connect on a personal level, and I can pray for them, and I pray for my team every week. That it's so I think there's a deeper connection there. We celebrate birthdays, we celebrate anniversaries. And so that, I think that helps too. They feel cared for on more than just a cog in the machine.
And I'm assuming like a lot of this is like sort of like you're coming up with the creative ideas and the vision and the maybe even the system and the structure, and then Heather or someone else on your team is actually like handling the implementation and then management of it to make sure it like keeps happening over and over again.
Yeah, I would say that is right for the most part. Like, she's more in the weeds of implementing, like making sure that things do happen. But we also, one of our core values is own it. So if we had a bunch of people that didn't own it, this isn't the right place for them. So we don't need to handhold and like crack the whip, if that makes sense. Like, everybody follows our processes and procedures and our goal setting and all of that, because they know that it works, and that the benefit is that they keep seeing the progress. So it's not hard to keep that in place. But yeah, I do set the vision and say, like, here's what we're going to do, but I never feel like there's a issue getting people to like go along with it. That's just not my team. Like, nobody on my team would be like, nope, I'm just not doing that. Right. Like, that's not how it works. We have discussions about it. I usually have buy-in. I'll say, I'm thinking about this. What do you guys think about this? Should we, But then once that decision is made, there's usually total buy-in. I think one of the things that we do as a team too, really well, comes from 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. Are you familiar with that book? And we've read that book as a team. So we do book clubs every once in a while. And that's one that we've actually read twice together as a team over the past few years. And I think we really strive for constructive conflict and making sure that we're having productive discussions when we do, when we have our team meetings every week, that we're having productive discussions and that everyone is having a say in a thought, right? You don't have to agree with the final decision that's made, as long as your voice is heard and you have a chance to weigh in on whatever it is. And so when we have that constructive conflict, it also allows for buy-in of the entire team for whatever the next goal is going to be, or the next thing that we're working on is going to be.
This is just so impressive. Again, I think like creators usually don't like the team building, leadership, all those aspects. So the way you describe it and just the specificity and the creativity and the way you're doing it in your own way is just so impressive.
As actually a manifestation of my creativity. Honestly, like, I don't see that as like, oh, I'm creative over here, but I'm like really, you know what? You want to know one of the things that drives me absolutely bonkers, and my team knows this, is that if they come to me with a spreadsheet and it's not beautiful, I'm like, I got to redo your spreadsheet. Like, not only do we have spreadsheets for everything, we have beautiful spreadsheets. They are colorful. They are branded to whatever brand that particular spreadsheet needs to be for. They are, they have the right fonts on them, and they're just like, they're beautiful to look at. Like, they're stunning to look at, because I think that's where that, like, I get to combine. Yes, we can have this be super functional and have this amazing system, but we're also going to have a beautiful system that just looks visually appealing, because that I can't not have that in my brain or in my world. It has to be beautiful. You don't come to me with a spreadsheet that is like numbers on a whiteboard.
it sort of filters through everything. This is interesting. When you were describing what was the question that Michael asked you on the leadership front?
What is it about my leadership that led to this result?
Right. And I think a lot of times, like as creative leaders, like maybe it's like fear or imposter syndrome or whatever that stops us, I think, from doing the way we want to do things. Right. I'm actually thinking of this talk that Brian Chesky, who's one of the best CEOs of our generation for Airbnb, gave, and he was describing how 10 years into Airbnb, very similar to what you described as actually, which is like they had all these different functions and they had a marketing function and this function and everything had like, there were like 10 marketing teams. And he's like, what is happening? What is happening in our company? And he talks about how 10 years into Airbnb, he basically was like, look, I come from RISD, I come from a design background. And he talks about how he didn't feel the confidence of building and structuring the team his way, right? And then during COVID, they basically re-architected everything where like now he's the editor of everything. So everything sort of like flows through him, and it's made it more aligned. And I guess the question is, when you're a creator, what is it that maybe prevented you from doing it your own way first? Was it like fear, imposter syndrome, or something else, especially when you've had success already?
Yeah, I think, if I look back, I think kind of that time where like we basically almost imploded, I think the way that I was growing it was sort of with this big org chart and this like feeling like, well, this is what I've read in all the books, right?
This is the proper way to do these things.
Yes, this is the proper way to do these things. And I think that was probably some of the imposter syndrome. Even like we had core values before. We had a whole list. There was like 10 of them, right? I don't know what any of them were because who can remember 10 core values? And it sometimes felt when I first started my business, like I was like a little kid trying to pretend to be a CEO. I think that's what sometimes that's how I felt. Like, I'm going to play CEO. And it didn't work that way. And I think it was actually the failure or the almost failure that gave me the confidence to go, you know what? No, I'm going to figure out what works for my company and my brand. And I'm also going to give myself the freedom to know that if I need to change something, I can change it, right? Like that's the beauty of being the boss, that I get to ultimately, if I go, you know what, this isn't working, we're going to switch it, then I can, because I have that freedom. And I think it was not until I really like literally almost blew up my company that I finally felt like I had the freedom to do that and to be that. And I would hope like, failure isn't fun. It's never fun, right? It sucks. And to go back to like spirituality, I was just at church this past Sunday, and the sermon was on trials and temptations. And he was talking about that very thing, that trials in our life are there to prepare us for the journey. They are there, and whatever your spiritual, whatever you believe in, it doesn't really matter. But like those trials, I mean, it's very true. Those trials in life prepare you for the next thing. And so, part of the problem, you can look back and go, wow, it'd be so great to just have my business take off like that and go to, whatever, 0 to 1 million overnight. It's not great because you're not equipped for that. You're not ready for that thing, because you have to have the stumbles along the way and the problems along the way, because trust me, the more money you make, the bigger your problems are. And so if you don't learn how to handle the smaller problems and learn how to have confidence in yourself and learn how to do all of these things, you're not going to be ready for that next step. And so now I sort of look at it like, whatever is going to happen in my business is going to happen the way it's supposed to happen. And yep, it might not be happening as fast as I want to, or this messiness that we're in right now might be taking longer than I wish that it would, but it is intended to prepare me. It's intended to prepare my team members. I believe it's intended for good, right? There's always like and I think that's part of the job of a visionary, is to never lose faith, right? Confront the brutal facts. This comes from the Stockdale paradox in the book Good to Great. I don't know if you've read that book. It's my favorite book. I read it every year, but he talks about that, right? The job of a leader is to confront the brutal facts, whatever they may be, right? The brutal facts of your reality right now. What is happening? What's not working? What do we need to fix? And yet at the same time, never lose hope and never lose faith in the idea that you will prevail in the end. Like we are going to get through this. We are going to figure this out. Whatever it's going to take. We might have to try this, and we might have to try this, and we might have to try a million different things before we actually stumble on the thing that works. but I am never going to lose that faith that we are going to get to that next piece that we want to be. And I think that confidence and also eyes wide open at whatever the problem is has come from having struggled through hard things before.
It's almost that while holding the faith and the vision of where you were going, you almost had to go through that crucible moment of, as you described, like playing CEO to get to the point where you could be the CEO you want to be.
Yeah, because and even when I look back on that, even the vision that I had at that time was, I think our big, hairy, audacious goal for our company was to make our brand a household name. And the irony of that was that the brand was me, right? The brand, our company is Ruth Soukup Omnimedia. So if we were trying to make Ruth Soukup Omnimedia and Ruth Soukup a household name, that meant making me a household name. And the reality of the situation, and part of, just like really like coming to terms with what I want, was realizing that that's not actually what I want. I don't have any desire for celebrity. I don't want to be famous. I barely can get myself to post on Instagram, right? Like, I love to create content. I love to transform the lives of my customers. I love being a CEO. I love being a visionary. I love making money, but I don't have any craving or desire for fame. Some people do. If you do, that's great, right? Like, make that your goal. But I think I was choosing that as the goal because I thought that was winning, right? And I thought that if I was the biggest and the best and the most famous, then I would be winning whatever competition I thought I was in. And my husband actually is the one who during this time would constantly say to me, honey, like, what do you want? What is winning to you? What does this look like? Like, is this what you want? You don't seem happy. Like, how are you? Like, you got to figure out what you want. And I did. I spent that summer that my husband refers to as my summer of rage because I had a lot of anger, but I spent a lot of time like soul searching and journaling on that specific question. What do you want? And what is it going to take to get there? And I think that was ultimately when I realized, like, I don't want fame, right? I want my business to be successful. I want my business to be $100 million company, but I don't need to be the face. I will be if I need to be to help to make things successful for as long as I need to be. But I also want to raise up leaders. I also want to have other people that can do the things that I do because it doesn't have to be all about me. Does that make sense?
It does. And I think it reflects even in sort of the new business that you're doing. I don't know how old that is, but Thinlicious, where it sounds like that's sort of, you're making this move of one, thinking much bigger, but also sort of making that transition from you being the face to building a company or a brand that's beyond yourself. Yes, very much so. And that is kind of the thing right now, right? Like, I'm leveraging myself and my personality and just the fact that I do have sort of a pre-existing audience to launch this company. But the long-term plan for Thinlicious is for me not to have to be the face of the company, for me not to have to be the one that's doing everything. And even, we started from the very beginning with other coaches and other people and so that I can eventually pull myself out of that and get to a point where I am still the visionary, but not necessarily the one up front. Is there a difference in the way you're approaching this from like either like a visionary or a creative aspect where in the first two businesses you were the face and now you're not the face? So has that changed how you approach the creativity or the visionary aspect of it? Yeah, I would say a little bit. I think it's a little bit tricky, right? When you start businesses and you are the face and people get attached to you. I have a lot of people who are attached to me. And that has been, it's amazing how long it takes to sort of retrain your people to not necessarily need you, right? Like to not need more Ruth. It's like that. What's that old Saturday Night Live sketch? Like more cowbell. But, and living well, spending less, that company, our living well side of the business, we've been working on that now for, almost 3 years.
having me really removed from the homepage. Just everything that goes out from that team is from the team, and not having me be really actively engaged in that. And it's gone well, but it definitely has had an impact, right? And we're finally starting to see hope coming out of the other side of that, but it took a while. And then EBA is sort of the same thing, right? When they're very involved in, or very used to me being involved in the coaching and doing all the trainings and doing all the things. And I like, you can probably tell as I'm talking to you, I have thoughts, I have ideas, I have a lot of things to say. And so my students were like so used to having just like full access. So there was like that moment of, wait, you mean we're not going to get to talk to Ruth every week? Like, no, that's not going to work. And they've kind of slowly gotten used to that thing too. And now we're starting to see that come out a little faster. I think that's been a little bit easier transition than I even thought it would be, because we have great coaches on that team too. It doesn't have to always be me. But I think part of that as a leader is me being willing to say it doesn't all have to be me, right? Like that's, I think for creators, that can be one of the hardest things, is to realize like there are other people who can do this as well or better than me.
Taking your face out of it, but also building this deep connection with your audience. And you've done that over time, along with this idea of not taking your audience for granted. How does that manifest actually in terms of what you're doing and how you're sending emails and what you're talking about in emails?
I think that ultimately my goal is to help facilitate transformation for the people that I serve. And I think that as I've shifted from not being so concerned about being the face of the business, or not being like the one, right, of not needing people to necessarily be attached to me, but starting to think about like what actually creates transformation for people, I think that shifts the way that I speak and even what I focus on. Because what I really do believe, honestly, now having done this for 14 years, is that as humans, we value what we pay for. And so content creators can create a lot of content, right? There's so much content going out there. And there's always this like nurture. You got to nurture your people. And that is true to a point. But I think there's also this point where you start to give so much away for free that people don't value it. And so I think more my focus now is, I know that the people who do my program are going to get the results, are going to actually see transformation in their life. The people that are tire kickers, that are going to maybe read the emails and have high expectations, but will never actually put their money where their mouth is, they're always going to be tire kickers, right? I can't help everybody, but I can help the people that actually want to help themselves and are willing to take that action to help themselves. And so I think more of my focus now is on how do I serve the people, how do I serve the customers in my business, the people that are actually paying to transform their lives in some way, and how do I make sure that most of my efforts and most of my time and energy is spent there, rather than trying to like be popular or have more people on my email list. I don't really care how many people are on my email list. We clean our email list. In fact, we've gotten to the point where, if somebody opts in, we give them a few emails and give them opportunities to take action. And if they don't, I'm really like, yeah, I don't think it's okay if you don't like me, like maybe we should break up, right? Like I try to do that really quickly, because I think that ultimately, like there's only so much time in the world, right? There's only so many hours in the day. And I would rather spend my time and energy focused on the people that are willing and ready to take action. And by taking action, that means investing in themselves. It's not even an investment in me, right? It's an investment in themselves, because then they're saying, yep, I'm willing to do this, or I'm ready to do this. I'm ready to take a step. I'm ready to take action. And because those are the people I know are going to get results. And that's ultimately what's most gratifying. to me is seeing people have results.
It's almost this focus of shifting focus from what kind of content can I create to like attract more people to, oh, these people are already paying me. What can I create to serve them? And maybe that influences the front end of what you create. Does that sound right?
Yeah, it totally does. And something that we teach in Elite Blog Academy is basically our proven process for our company that we call the customer superhero path. And this was something that we developed kind of in the midst of all of that business breakdown that I told you about earlier, where we attraction is one phase of it, where you have to attract new people into your orbit. But the bulk of your profit and the bulk of your time and energy should ultimately be spent on, getting people to invest in themselves, transforming their lives, and then ascending them into deeper transformations. And so if you can get your business to that point of a point where most of your time and energy is spent there, that is not only easier and more profitable, it's also more gratifying because you're actually helping people in a real and meaningful way and not kind of just on the surface level. And so I think that's probably been the biggest shift for me, just in the last few years of where I focus my time and energy is not just on constantly trying to grow, get more people, but it's trying to go, how do I serve people more effectively and do this in a more effective way? And it's been great. It really has. Now, not to say that you don't also need attraction. You do. And like, for instance, for Thinlicious, it's still this brand new baby company. We're having to focus more on the attraction side. So that's what I actually find pretty exhausting.
Can you describe that actually? How do you find it exhausting? Because even for me, right, there's this whole now like rise of these short clips. And I've tried a few experiments with that and we've never really cracked it. And I remember talking to a friend about it. I realized doing this, which is like long form podcasting, which is very nuanced, deep thinking and all that, versus the short form, which it's almost like speaking a completely different language.
Yeah.
Right? Is that sort of what you felt too, in the way that it's exhausting or something else?
I find it exhausting because it's so surfacey and it feels so trite to me, and you can't actually explore like real concepts. I love podcasting. And so I did, and I was trying to figure out for Thinlicious how we were going to do that, right? I don't want to be, I can have people on my team doing social media stuff. So ultimately what I decided to do was if I need to create more content for this brand to help with attraction, I will create one piece of in-depth, high-quality content every week. And then you guys can take that and turn it into all sorts of other stuff, right? I'll write the podcast episode, I'll record the podcast episode, and then you can turn it into videos, short, take clips and have little videos. You can turn it into a blog post, you can turn it into whatever you need to, into graphics that you can post places. But I'm going to spend my time doing something that is meaningful to me, that's actually going to like create something that is worth listening to. Cause I don't like wasting my time on stuff that feels trite to me. That's where I think the exhaustion comes in, right? If I feel like this just bugs me, right? I don't want to look at it on TikTok. I get annoyed by that stuff. And so I don't want to spend my time creating it.
Yeah. And by the way, I completely agree with on the surface thing, because I've tried it's sort of like you have to like almost get in that zone of here's the 3 things that whatever, but it feels so fake and like almost like you're acting on it.
I'm totally with you on that.
But on the business side, I want to go back to your email because one, like it's already impressive that it's like million plus, but the fact that you've like also like cleaned it up and doing all those things to get people unsubscribed, that's just so impressive. Here's like how you built that, and even how would you approach building it again if you don't want to do social media?
Primarily through Facebook ads is how that's what I teach my students to do. And that's how we're constantly running lead gen ads, constantly. We grow all the time from that. And that is part of our structure of our company. Like I said, we have a very specific process called the customer superhero path, where we get people into our, through attraction, which for us, I mean, you can do all sorts of attraction, right? Whether it's a podcast, whether it's organic social media, whether it's writing blog posts, all of those things, but you can also do paid attraction too, which is essentially what we have found has been the best ROI and the best return on our time, versus trying to spend tons of time trying to, grow organically, which tends to be slow and unpredictable. And the problem for most creators, bloggers, content creators, influencers, that kind of thing, is that they spend so much time in attraction that they don't think about what the rest of their business looks like. And so attraction is only the surface of your business. It's basically like the very tip of the iceberg. It's a thing that people see. And so it looks like it's important. And yet that's not where the money is. And if you're trying to monetize your business, but you're stuck in attraction and you're not actually getting people to go deeper into your business and into your customer superhero path, then you're missing the boat. And the reality is that I've done surveys on this through Elite Blog Academy, is that probably 90% of, bloggers and influencers out there are what I call the income danger zone, which is a very low amount of revenue for the number of people that they're talking to on a regular basis, right? Because they haven't figured out how to actually bring those people deeper in and actually convert them and actually have them invest in their business. They monetize through attraction strategies, which that would be things like ad network revenue or podcast ads, if that's like your main source of revenue, or like sponsored posts if you're an influencer, or sponsored content if you're an influencer. All of that is attraction level monetization, but it's not where the real money is when it comes to online business. And so what I have found and what I teach through Elite Blog Academy is how to actually create a business that is not so dependent on having this huge audience, but instead getting the right people into your orbit who are going to convert and pay. So, have I grown my email list to 1 million? Yep, I have. And I could do it again easily, because it just would be a matter of being willing to spend enough money, right? Like I spend millions of dollars on Facebook ads, but I have also made many, 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 many more millions of dollars than that, because I have a system for how I do it, right? And to me, the time and energy that's invested into Facebook ads has paid off far more than the time and energy spent on social media or trying to post to TikTok, because those people just don't convert as well. Like, we run the data and they just don't convert at the same level.
What's interesting there too is by doing and spending time or spending money on ads, you've saved time that you can take to like focus on products and creating good content for or good content for your like customers. Because one of my observances about sort of like the internet marketing world has been that, like you said, right, because people are spending so much time creating surface content and all of these different things, the marketing or the attraction side has gotten so complicated with like these like complicated funnels and all these different things. And really it's because the products suck. So you have to do all this like complicated stuff to convince people because your product isn't good. But if you can focus on your product and spend less time on attraction, it actually works better. And it sounds like that's what you've found through data too.
Right. Yes, absolutely. And I would rather spend my time creating amazing programs that are getting results, that we have so many success stories for, that it's easy to convince more people to take it because they see the concrete results that people are getting from the work that we're doing. And yeah, that is 100% been my strategy. And that is, I wish, I wish that there would be more of that, honestly, in the world, because that's where we get the good stuff. That's where we get the deep and meaningful stuff. And you're absolutely right. Like the 3 things that you need to know on a TikTok or an Instagram reel are not going to change your life, but actually like taking the time to learn and grow from something that is like requires you to put the effort in. And people won't put the effort in unless they invest in themselves, right? You don't you don't take the time to follow through on something that you got for free on TikTok. You take the time to follow through on the things that you actually deem worthy of your investment.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting too, where we're sort of like heading to this, I think, Cambrian explosion of content with AI and stuff or on social media platforms. So you don't even know what's real or what's not.
Mm-hmm. AI is terrifying. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I use it like crazy, right? Like it's amazing. And I've actually been using it consistently in my business and for probably 2 years, but how much it has improved in the last 6 months. It's like night and day. It's almost scary how much it just improved in the last 6 months because I've been watching it all this time. And it terrifies me to think about what it's going to look like 6 months from now if it's improving at that rate. And I think that's something that content creators should be concerned about, right? Use it if you can, and if there's ways to use the technology, but also like be aware that you may be phased out really quickly if there's not some sort of controls on it. I think the biggest thing that worries me about AI is the ability to basically steal people's voices. And I think that is something that any content creator should be concerned about. It's handy for me when I tell it to write in my voice. I don't like the fact that other people can tell it to write in my voice because that feels like they're stealing a piece of me. Does that make sense?
Yes, it's almost like the people can basically, they can do it right now, which is take podcast recordings that I have done or you have done, put it in the AI program, and then basically make it say anything that they want in our voices. That's a terrifying side. I'm curious, like you said, you've been using it for 2 years. What are some ways in which, as a creator, you're using AI in your business that's been helpful?
I use it to do outlines a lot. I use it so I'll, say, I want to do a blog post or a podcast episode on X topic, like give me an outline. And it will really quickly. And then I will usually like finesse it. I think that I use AI in a way that I also use my brain. So there's never been a moment where I've used AI to just like create something and it's spit it out and it's been exactly what I want. Cause I usually have an idea of kind of where I want to go. But then when I go to write it, and we use a platform called Jasper. That's what I've been using for the last couple of years, which is, it's a little more robust than just like Chat GPT, but then I'll put it in a document and it will help, if I can't think of like, I wonder what I should say here. I'll start a sentence, I'll start with a couple words and press the button and it will literally come up with kind of like something very close to what I was thinking about saying. It just did it faster. So I feel like it makes writing faster. Like I said, I'm still engaging my brain. It still comes out being the content that I want it to be. But it makes things go a little faster.
Yes, it's an impressive brainstorming tool, but I completely agree, which is you don't want to use what it spits out at first because it's usually like copied or something else.
Yeah. Well, and I just think I worry that the lack of critical thinking that's going to happen with the next generation that can just use this without having to think about what it's actually putting out there. And, even like for Thinlicious, for instance, I talk about a lot of medical conditions and health related stuff that you have to be correct in what you say, and it will just make stuff up. And so, I have to make sure that I'm verifying anything that I'm like AIing that's part of that. I will make sure that I go and look up and go, is this totally accurate? Is this how I want to say it? Does this actually make sense? Because I'm not going to go put something out there that I know isn't factually correct. And it will literally make stuff up. And so I have 2 teenage daughters, and I think about, man, if this existed when I was in high school, there would be no way that I wouldn't have it write every single paper for me, right? But they aren't thinking about that. They'd be like, hit the button. And I can't even imagine what percentage at this point of high school papers are written by ChatGPT.
I was actually talking to a friend of mine and telling her about ChatGPT, and she hadn't heard of it. And I was showing her how you do things with it, and she goes, okay, whatever. She didn't really believe in it, right? I was like, no, people are using it. And then The next week she messages me. She's like, yeah, we had this like work presentation and this team was presenting this thing. And I started asking questions and they couldn't answer the questions. And then they finally were like, oh, we just had ChatGPT make the whole presentation. So they had no idea what they were saying, but they just had the presentation from it and they're just talking about that.
Yeah. I think that's the part that is going to be scary. So like I said, I love using AI. I think it makes things faster, but I'm still engaging my brain and I would still be able to answer any question about, and I've used it to help me create webinars and just make the content faster for that. But I get to the end of a webinar and I still got to be able to answer every question that comes up during the Q&A time. So if I don't know what I'm talking about and I don't know the stuff, it's not going to help me. And honestly, I would never want to be that person. Like the authenticity to me and the truth and being who you say, like those qualities are way too important to me. The integrity of your business is too important.
And it's never going to create that connection with your audience.
Right.
This has been a masterclass in just content creation and leadership. And we're close to time, so we'll end with the questions we always end with, and then we'll drive it to a close.
Okay.
So these are like fast questions. Feel free to answer in like 30 to 60 seconds. For first one, what 3 books, and we can actually expand it to like other media or people, have been in your journey, like for you, like the most impactful and why?
Well, gosh, what genre? I would say business books. If I were to pick 3 that I read over and over again, one is definitely Good to Great. Like I said, I read it every single year and have for probably the last 20 years. And another one that I really love that I have read a lot from a business perspective, but it's more of a productivity book, is Juliet's School of Possibilities, which is it's like told as a fable. And it is just such a good time management book of just thinking about time. Like time is fine. Basically, the takeaway from that book is time is finite. Opportunities are infinite. Like there's always going to be more things to do than you have time for. So choose wisely. And I love the way that it's presented in that book. So I listen to that one a lot. I love audiobooks. And then the other one is we've already talked about too, is Traction has been such a game changer for our business of implementing Traction and then Rocket Fuel as well. So that's 4. I could keep going. I have lots of books. I'm a big reader.
Go for it. If you have other ones, actually the School of Possibilities, because it sounds like it's not a very like time management book in terms of like structure and make to-do lists and all these different things. It seems like it's approaching it from a different. I just actually ordered it because in the way you described it in the title is so good. But yeah, if you have any other ones you want to share, feel free to.
Another one that I've read, and there's a whole series on them now, is called the Go Giver. I don't know if you've heard of that one. That's another one that's told in fable format, which I really love. And the Go Giver Marriage is one of the ones in the series, right? There's a bunch of different ones, but the Go Giver Marriage, I would say it applies to just relationships in general, but that was really impactful on me as well. And anything by Patrick Lencioni, I love all of his books, also told in fable format. Clearly, I have a type, Fables. But the 5 Dysfunctions of a Team is so good. But even if you just want to wrap up of all of his concepts, The Advantage is really fantastic as well, because he just talks about, and that's more of a business structure book, which really goes along with a lot of what we've been saying.
What was it? The Advantage. Is that by the same guy from?
Also by Patrick Lencioni. Yeah.
Gonna get that. Okay, next question. So whenever we like start in our careers, there's always people who sort of like take a chance on us, right? So I'm curious, like, who's one person that if you could give credit or thanks to in your life that you haven't had a chance to thank, who would that be and why?
Well, thankfully I have had a chance to thank him, but the person that made a big impact on me early on was Dan Miller, and the author of 48 Days to a Life You Love, I think is the name. And I saw him speak at a conference pretty early on in my business life. And I was kind of right in the middle of a like big struggle, right? All those struggles that make us stronger. And he said something that just like created the light bulb moment that really actually led to me creating Elite Blog Academy, and which ultimately transformed my business. But that was every time somebody asked me the same question 3 times, I create a product. And I was like, oh, and at that point, like before that point, I'd written some books, but I hadn't really like kind of delved like deeply into products and courses and that kind of thing. And that kind of just is what spurred that for me. And obviously that's been what has ultimately created the business that I have today. So I took him out for dinner a couple years ago. We still talk every once in a while, and he's a great guy.
That's an amazing insight. Next one, and then we'll end from after that, which is so it's actually interesting because I think there's I forget what you said is a tagline of Elite Blog Academy. I think there's a connection. Actually, the genesis of this podcast called Conscious Creators was I was trying to understand, like, how do you make a life through your art without selling your soul? And I think you mentioned the without selling your soul part also in Elite Blog Academy. So I'm curious, like, for you, what does it mean to be a conscious creator?
I mean, I think the biggest piece is focusing on how you can serve. I mean, at the end of the day, I think that is, I want to serve my team well. I want to be a good boss and a good CEO and a leader that inspires and that grows and that helps my employees. I hope that everybody who works for me, even if they stop working for me at some point, will say, I am a better person because I worked for this company and because I had this leadership, right? I hope that someday I'm the leader that they look back on and go, that was the person who taught me about leadership. So I think that part, but then also, I mean, just the customers that we serve and creating transformation. I think ultimately, if you can get to the point where you realize that your creativity has an opportunity to transform people's lives and to not just be an outlet for selfish pursuits, right? There's that piece of creativity that you're just like, I just want to create and I just want to do what I want to do. I want to create my thing. And then there's that creativity that can actually help transform other people's lives. And that is the kind of creativity that will that'll ultimately transform you. And so to me, that's what it's all about is realizing. And for me, I also realize and have realized that the more that I create in a way that also converts is how I get to transform people's lives.
It's about service at the end.
Mm-hmm. It really is.
I love that. And then lastly, I'm curious, like driving this towards a close, what are you most excited about or looking forward to in the sort of like universe of all the things that you're doing in the next 3 to 5 years?
No, I have lots that I'm excited about. So, I mean, I have a 5-year vision that I've typed out that I have. It's not just business, but personal as well. But one of the things that my husband and I are working on is we're closing at the end of the month on a property that is hopefully going to be our forever property, right? We want to create a legacy for our kids and have this kind of home and place that people come and gather and have guests and all sorts of, we love to entertain. We love to be social. We just want to be this like haven for the world where anybody can come and feel like this is where I get restored. And so that's what we're working on creating in our personal life. My goal is to also someday have a company headquarters, even though we're an online company, to have a company headquarters there where my team can come and gather and where I can spend basically 100% of my time being the visionary, being the leader, being the mentor to the people that I lead without necessarily needing to do any of the day-to-day type of stuff. And so that's what I'm working towards. I still got a couple years to go on that, but I am excited for what that looks like in the future because that really does get me fired up.
That HQ sounds amazing. If people want to learn more and find out more about you, the website is Elite Blog Academy, or one of them. Where else do people go to find you?
Well, it depends what you want to learn. If you are interested in more of the business side of stuff and the customer superhero path that we talked a lot about, which honestly, if you're a creator and you need help on the business side of things, that's where you need to go. You do need Elite Blog Academy. You do need the customer superhero path in your life. So that's eliteblogacademy.com. If you just want to find out more about me or listen to my podcast, I have two podcasts. One is for Thinlicious. It's called Ditch the Carbs. I have a more personal podcast where I just talk about whatever I want to talk about. That is called Do It Scared. And you can find both of those wherever you listen to podcasts.
It's awesome. And we'll have all that linked up. Thank you so much, Ruth, for doing this. If you're a creator and you're making the transition to CEO, this was just a complete masterclass in leadership and team and everything else. So thank you for coming on.
Well, thanks so much for having me. It was awesome.